expand on this request?
Hello, everyone. This is where we are increasing our rates for our members, as it says. It's been a long time since we've done that. Our rate increases are between 10 and 12% of our rates now. That's just to keep up with the market, the other rec centers throughout Northeast Ohio.
Does anyone have any questions? I see there is an emergency. Oh, excuse me. Mr. Lombardi?
Thank you, Mr. Kerr. What exactly am I looking at here? When I'm looking at these rates, I see 100 for a senior adult 60 plus, $150 slash $37.50.
That's, if they want to pay monthly, they can have a payroll deduction.
So it's $37.50 a month if they do it that way. Otherwise, it's $150 for the entire year.
No, it'll be, they can do the payroll deduction until it's paid for. Not necessarily for the whole year.
Okay, I see.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the reason they've done that start of year is just so it wouldn't drag out through the entire year. So you can do 3 monthly installments. Okay. Or 3, whichever way, every pay or every month, however you'd like to do it.
Yes. Any other questions? Mr. Gray?
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. You mentioned that the increases are to keep us, or keep pace with other rec centers in the area. Where would you say this places us? Ahead of them, still behind them, in the middle?
We're still behind some of them. I don't think we're outpricing our residents. You know, I don't want to go too high, but I think we're doing ourselves some justice by trying to catch up. Now, the gym-only facilities are very hard to keep up with. There's some that charge $10 a month. You can go in there and lift weights, and that's it. We have weights, we have a walking track, we have gyms, you know, floor space, we have rooms we run classes in. So the difference between those and what we do is that, the whole area as well.
But we're not going to be the highest in the area.
No, absolutely not.
Thank you.
Mrs. Lippman?
Thank you. Are we going to include the classes in these charges again this year? Or I know in the past we've had a charge for individual classes as well as.
There are some classes you will be charged as normal, but most of our classes are included in the membership. There are some special classes that we do that there may be an extra charge, but most of our classes are included in membership.
Thank you.
Okay? You're welcome.
Any other questions? Please stay there.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
So the second request is please prepare legislation to authorize the Director of Parks and Recreation on behalf of the Massillon Rec Board to conduct the process of selecting and entering into contract with a design-build firm contractor for design-build services for the City of Massillon Park and Recreation Park Pavilion Construction Project not to exceed $300,000. Mr. Peter?
If you recall, I came to you, I think it was the end of August, to put this contract out to bid. Or I was going to come to you and it was pulled because there was some language that wasn't correct. We believe, was speaking the law department, administration, the engineers, this is correct. This is how we're moving forward with any new contracts. Last year we purchased the design build document. So moving forward, we'll use that for everything. We need to clean this up, and I do apologize. I don't want to waste your time by coming back to you, but this is all approved. As soon as we can get going with this will be probably a spring project, depending on contractors' availability, but the sooner the better.
And this is for the Lincoln Park?
Yes, Lincoln Park Pavilion. There are other individual, other organizations that may or may not be involved with this. Once this is passed, that's when I'm going to approach them with the final on what we want to do and see if anybody else would like to get involved with other organizations in the city.
And this pavilion is an overhead pavilion along with restrooms?
Yes, a pavilion and restrooms. If you've been a community park, think of that one. Similar to that, with block and an open pavilion area. Block for the restrooms and a storage room and a chase. We can access all of our pipes and things like that.
Anyone have any questions? Mrs. Lippman?
First of all, I want to thank you for getting this to surface and not allowing it to get muddled in a lot of other things that we're working on. I know that this has been in the works for a long time. I appreciate it very much. This is in the 6th Ward. I think that the pavilion itself is well needed. It will be used significantly due to the fact that that park also houses the disc golf. And I know in conversations that I've had with them as well, it was, that it was always an issue that there were not restrooms there. So I think that this will certainly help that expand as well. I did want to confirm that the existing pavilion that's there, which is quite small, will be removed.
No, that will stay.
Oh, that will
On
stay.
Park Road, the new pavilion, more than likely the site is going to be down by the parking lot.
Okay, and that one will stay
That
on?
that one will stay there. It's just a nice old pavilion. I mean, it's got a new roof on it. It's pretty clean.
And there won't be any issue with being conflicting with any of the disc golf
I've already talked to them.
areas? Okay, all right. That's all I have, thank you.
Any other questions? This also has emergency language, so it'll be on my next agenda. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Police and fire,
I don't have anything this evening.
public utilities,
Nothing from public utilities, Mr. Lewis?
rules and courts,
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I do have two new items. First one is, please prepare legislation amending the occupation list of class titles and miscellaneous schedule to add the position of administrative assistant, part-time, temporary, seasonal in the Massillon City Health Department. The creation of this position was approved by the Board of Health on October 19, 2021. The Board of Health set the rate of pay for this position at a range of $15 to $20 per hour. At the Board of Health's request, Massillon Civil Service Commission approved the addition of this position to the classified service in the Massillon City Health District on October 26, 2021. The Board of Health intends to hire 3 administrative assistants on a part-time and temporary basis through the use of workforce development grant funds. This does have emergency language as the funds are immediately available. The grant's already commenced, and the health department has need for these additional staff. Do you have anybody from the administration like to talk on this?
Mr. Richard, real quick.
Ms. Lewis?
I just wanted to point out so that there's no confusion, as we discuss this, this is, I believe, still the grant that has yet to be passed by council. It's the one that is probably coming up to 3rd reading, just so that everybody's clear.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening. Any details on, I think we talked about this already before, as far as the grant was concerned, we were discussing. Any additional details?
No, I think, it's explained here. It does go along with the ordinance number 150 that was given second read last week. So it does go along with it to give the complete explanation of the positions that the health board has already approved, as well as civil service.
Okay. Any questions from Rules and Courts Committee members? Mr. Hermking?
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Mrs. Sylvester, while you're there, what does it mean on the reason the grant has already commenced? What does that mean?
Because the grant actually began on September 25th, I believe, or 21st. That language is in with the grant. So that money is already available, has commenced, it has already started. Other communities are already utilizing the grant.
And the city already has the funds?
That's correct.
Anybody else on committee? Mr. Lombardi?
How do we have the funds when the grant acceptance hasn't been approved yet?
Ms. Lewis?
I can answer. That's not uncommon. Often if we apply for a grant, the funds will arrive prior then the city would have to return the funds. So it's not, I will say that that's not an uncommon occurrence. We see it often.
Mrs. Lippman?
Yes, just to clarify, this is only for this one administrative position, or is it for the 3 positions we talked about earlier? One was a clerk, one was a data manager, and one was an assistant. Has that changed?
Yes,
Is that
they
additional?
did, they did put it all together, so this is, as it states here, 3 administrative assistants, as the title is there. So those are all the job duties basically that they will do under that position.
Okay, so there is no data input manager that's going to be,
No, these are the positions that the health board approved and civil service put through. That's the position title basically, but under that title, of course, they will do a lot of those duties as well.
okay, well, just one more little question here. The administrative assistant position details that are attached, I just want to clarify, when you're talking part-time, that's 30 hours or less? Temporary position through 6/1 of 2023?
Yes, that's through the dates of the grant at the present time.
Okay, and as I look at the preferred qualifications, bachelor's degree and experience in public health or health educator experience, and we're planning to pay $15 an hour?
$15 to $20 per hour, depending on experience, it says.
Okay, and do we believe that we're going to have interest in those positions with those qualifications for $15 to $20 per hour? I guess I'm thinking if we're looking for all this experience and we've got salaries that are down here, are we going to be able to attract quality individuals for this type of work that we're looking for?
Well, the health commissioner put this together, the board of health approved it, and civil service approved it. So I don't want to answer on their behalf, but I would say yes.
So, okay, all right, thank you.
Mrs. Creamer?
I need some clarification because when the finance piece was presented to us and Ms. Argent answered our questions, she specifically stated those 3 positions, the administrative assistant, the general clerk, and the data manager. I believe she stated that they were already posting these jobs. These jobs were posted, they were on the website. So I guess I'm confused. That had to be presented to the health board at that time to get those 3 positions posted on the website. And then today we have those 3 positions, or 2 of those positions wiped away because based on the grant, I believe she stated that 50% of those funds needed to be used hiring new staff. So I understand this piece, there are 3 new staffs, but how did we change from the finance piece with those jobs posted to today we have just 3 administrative assistant positions?
Well, I believe they put the positions together, and this is the position and the job duties that they put together, and that's what the health board approved in civil service.
And she also presented they were contracted positions. But today, they're listed as part-time, temporary, and seasonal.
Let me bring up Bill Bartos. He actually worked with the Civil Service Commission and the Health Commissioner as well.
Ms. Bartos?
Did everybody hear me? Okay, great. So, sorry, the civil service meeting ran. But with these positions, initially the health department considered contract positions, very good point. But as we discussed the positions with them, they actually brought the the positions to us for review. And this involves an intersection of a lot of areas of law, so I hope it's not confusing. The positions and the job duties, we had to look at, was it correct to call these people independent contractors? Because you have independent contractors versus employees. When you call somebody an independent contractor, that has implications for tax purposes, for owners purposes. Based upon the duties of these people, we determined that it was most appropriate to call these people employees. So they had wanted these to be independent contractors. We said under the law they need to be employees. Therefore, then we had to go to the next analysis. Okay, if they're employees, what does that have to, what effect does that have? What impact does that have? Well, they're part-time, okay, but that still doesn't impact their civil service status. There's a Supreme Court case that actually says just because you're part-time doesn't mean you're not civil service. And we went through that analysis and determined that they would actually be classified employees under civil service. And so it was a process, but we came to the conclusion that the most correct interpretation of the law and the most correct, I guess, intersection of independent contractor versus employee and civil service law was that these would be employees of the city, part-time, temporary positions, and they'd be classified positions in the classified service of the health district. Therefore, the recommendation was made, the health commissioner go back to the health board and request this one admin assistant position be added to the health board's occupational list. Knowing that 3 positions would be hired under it. The request before you was to simply add it to the occupation list of class titles. If you'll recall in 2019, when the health board was kind of split out from the city, there was that discussion of the health board being a separate political entity. The health board does have its own powers and duties, and the health board, one duty it has, one power it has, is to create its own positions, set its own salaries, duties, etc. So it's exercised that authority. But we still are functioning on the occupation list of class titles that everybody knows. And so this is actually one thing that the law department, civil service, that's why I was late, and civil services is one thing we've been working on is kind of something to clean up, bring it to council, discuss it with all of you. But this is a position that the health department needed right away, and so it's before you right now. But the best suggestion we had was to continue on the process, which is to health board, yep, they have the power, the authority to create their own positions, set their duties, set their salary. But given the auditor, their process is to look at an employee, say, are they on the occupation list of class titles, yes or no? And the way we've traditionally done things, for lack of a better phrase, is to include all positions on the occupation list of class titles. The suggestion was to make sure it still came to council for now until we had another process in place or an alternate process that might say health district may not have to bring some positions in the future to council for approval. A similar comparison might be for example, the courts. Oftentimes they'll bring things to council for approval, but it's kind of approval that council understands if they don't approve it, the courts can kind of mandate it. Health department doesn't have that same authority, but they do have certain powers under the law to set their own staff, and so that's an intersection that we're working on right now, as well as a number of other things under civil service. This just happens to be one item that we need to act on right now, and I know it's confusing, and believe me, I'd rather not be the guy that has to deal with it, but luck of the draw, I guess. So if there's any questions, I'll take them now.
Do you know, does this impact the duties that were planned for the positions prior to, reclassification, for lack of a better word?
I don't want to speak for the health commissioner or the health board, but I believe their intent is to, have them do the same duties, but with the understanding that they have to just classify it civil service. And the easiest way to do that was to just create one new slot and they put 3 people into that slot with the varying duties. And then that was why the pay scale was set 15 to 20. That way that based upon duties, need, and experience, they could set varying pay range.
Mr. Lombardi?
I guess my question is for Mr. Lewis. How does this affect the current legislation that we're entertaining on finance?
That's what I was raising my hand to say. It's my opinion that I'll just request a tabling at the next meeting to give you guys a little more time to discuss this and figure out, because why would we fund it before we know exactly what we're funding? And it seems like things have changed a little bit, so I would offer up a tabling until the next meeting would be my immediate thought.
I would just say for the funding piece, it's a simple amendment from contract employees to just simply employees. Once again, this is a request from the board under their authority and their powers under the Ohio Revised Code, simply to add that position to the occupation list of class titles for auditing purposes.
Mrs. Creamer first.
So when it was initially presented, it was an 18-month contract. So how does that come into play when you have part-time, temporary, seasonal, when you said they're an employee, they're going to be employees. So in 18 months, do you say, thank you for your service, out the door you go? I mean, I guess that's a little bit hard when you say contract, there's an expiration. But now, when that's no longer going to be used, I find this very difficult to have a stop time, with these 3 employees.
And the position is posted basically the same as such, as this has an end date of this date. And that's a good point. Still posted the same way in the job posting, but this is the best way to, like I said, we're statutory city, we're bound by civil service law. I think every statute, whether we're statutory or not, we're bound by independent contractor employee law. So the last thing we want to do is hire somebody as an independent contractor, label them independent contractor, and then have OPRs come back and say, oh, those aren't independent contractors. You shouldn't pay into PERS for them and have those implications there. So I agree with you. You make a very good point there. But they'll come into the position knowing full well that it does have an end date. It is a temporary position. I believe it's even listed on the job description that you were provided.
Mrs. Lippman?
Yes, can I ask why the job description for the administrative assistants is under this piece of legislation, under rules and courts, and the other, I'm looking at the 150, ordinance 150, 2021, and the other 2 positions, job descriptions are under that, the finance piece. I'm just wondering why we have these 2 positions under 150 and the new administrative position job description under the new legislation. Do we know why?
I mean, I can't give you a definitive answer. I think the answer is that when that first piece of legislation was submitted, I think it was fully the intent to hire independent contractors. We were asked to review this. We gave our opinion that independent contractors would not be appropriate under the law. We went through the civil service process. That does take some time, but civil service has now approved it. And so really, all that's being asked of council is to amend that occupation list of class titles for the auditing purposes to add that position. The authority to create these positions, to give them salaries, to give them duties, that does lie with the health board. And all that we're doing now is continuing our previous process that existed prior to 2019 when there was that split. You might remember that was well documented in our audit for that year. we're just continuing that process until we can completely clean everything related to civil service and the city's hiring process up. Mind you, every time we edit or amend the occupation list and class title, we still reference back to a 1997 ordinance. So that's the last time we really took a comprehensive look at the occupation list and class titles.
I see the mayor's approach. Would you like to speak?
Is this on? Can you hear me okay? I just wanted to reiterate to Mr. Lewis how important this is to pass next week. Terry has been patiently waiting. Other cities are using a contracted way to hire their people. They already have their people hired, they're working. We listened to our law department. They said they wanted us to go a different route. So we created the new legislation, brought it to you all. But Terry really needs these people to work with her. So, Mr. Lewis, if you could amend that next week for us on that's the finance piece to just say employees, we greatly appreciate that. But, you know, Terry is a wonderful director, but they are very, very busy, and we're trying to do everything correctly. So I don't want there to be anybody feeling like there's some conspiracy or something. There isn't. It's just that they didn't like the way that Terry approached it at the beginning as a contracted employee and really drove us down to the actual employee of the city. And when Terry will be interviewing these people, she will share, as the job posting says, that there is a deadline to this position, so they will know that up front. And there may be an opportunity that the government sends us more money, and then we can keep them on longer. We won't know that for a while. So I just wanted to add those couple pieces. And I just wanted to reiterate, there are still going to be 3 jobs. The first administrative assistant will be managing the grants, making sure money is used to the city's greatest benefit, assuring that all grant deliverables are met in time, and researching for additional grants to meet the needs of Massillon citizens. The next one will be doing the data manager coordinator, but they're all underneath the title administrative assistant. But they are going to have different duties. So I just wanted you to know that as well. But we're really excited about receiving $180,000, but the longer we take to approve it, the more money we have to send back. And so that is, and it's not your fault. Don't think that I'm saying that at all. It's just the process we have had to go through. So you would really help Terry out if you could pass it next Monday. Thank you.
Mrs. Kramer?
I just need clarification because on the initial request, it said 2 new positions, which the mayor just referenced, and then 1 extended contracted position. So is that person going to, do they have to reapply to this 1 position, or is one of those 3 positions given to this person that is the extended contracted position?
Yeah, I think that was originally, I think that they're making the correct accommodations to treat that appropriately under the law. But like I said, everything is as it was written in the original request. It's just being adjusted to comply with the current law. So I think that their intent is to continue on with how it was originally written. So, and if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to discuss this. I know it's confusing, believe me. I've had to work through it. And I'd be happy to discuss it with you. But I do know the importance of this for the health department. I do know that they would like to move quickly, and so I'm happy to discuss it with you at any time. Both either pieces, including the funding and the health board's authority as well.
Mrs. Lippman?
Will we be able to receive the edited version of ordinance 150 prior to the request for voting?
My intent would be to, and the way Diane and I usually work is, I usually prepare one of those on Friday with the rest of the ordinances and provide it for the council meeting for the following Monday. The reason that this that it wasn't presented sooner is, I think there was a question about this request. I think this request was technically ready, a week ago, or at least from a law department standpoint, it was ready a week ago, but there were still some questions. But the bottom line is to comply with the law, these are the recommendations. And so that's why it's before you today. If there's any questions, like I said, I'd be happy to discuss with anyone.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burke. Next piece I have is request to amend ordinance 9/2021, occupational list of class titles, part-time, temporary, seasonal, wage classes, and rates by replacing with attachment A. Positions are part-time within the Parks and Recreation Department to include the Legends Golf Course. Changes are requested to begin to be effective 12/20/21. The measure was approved by Recreation Board in the November 3rd, 2021 meeting. This has emergency language and reason to amend ordinance number 9/2021. Mr. Pedro, would you like to speak on this?
As you all know, the minimum wage keeps going up every year. I think the first time we did this was 2 years ago. We had mainly to keep up with minimum wage moving up. We already have all of these positions, just moving some of them up to different pay rates, and mainly to be able to hire people. As you all know, I'm really sick of saying it, kind of embarrassed to say it, but getting people to come and apply for jobs, hopefully these wages are going to make it a little more attractive for Parks and Rec. So that's the reason. There are no new jobs here. We're just trying to keep up, and so we can. We had 4 people work the entire summer from, I'll say, from April to November, that were there the whole time. I think he had up to 6 or 7 out in the parks. So hopefully this is going to attract more people. We're finding that now, even at the rec center, we're having a hard time getting people to come and apply for the jobs. So just trying to attract more people.
So this will cover existing employees?
Yes.
You're not planning to add new, or you're trying to add new, but...
Well, we're very low right now on number of employees.
Okay.
There are no new positions here. These are all existing positions that we need to fill throughout the year. Some of these are seasonal, some are part-time.
Questions? Ms. Lemon?
Do the employees that fill these positions have to be 18 and older?
Everything but the lifeguards, we start at 16, they have to go through training first. I know that sounds a little odd, but that's kind of they have to do the CPR training, have to pass all the lifeguard training. But most of our employees have to be 18. Any parks worker has to be 18 and over with a driver's license.
Is there any thought too, if we've got difficulty in filling some of the, and I'll say more entry-level positions, to add 16 and older? Do you
We've
think
talked about it, we haven't got to that point yet. So it's not totally out of the question, but I'd like to keep it where we're at now.
I think that's
If we can keep, continue to do that. Especially in the parks, I don't want to, not that a 16-year-old can't run a weed eater, but maybe out there, maybe 2 of them out in the park by themselves, I don't want to say by themselves together. At least we have adults out there.
Yes, I was just thinking at the front desk, or to clean towels, or something like that.
The front desk, I would say we want older people because they're handling money, and nothing against younger kids, but the lifeguards, I know it sounds a little different, but they're training them in school, and we're taking advantage of that. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mrs. Creamer?
Was there a market survey performed to come to these new wages, and what was the increased percentage?
I just called some of the local people that I know in the area, Jackson. Now they don't have a parks department. They call it streets. I don't think it's streets and highways. It's done a little different over there. But a lot of their newer guys. We lost one guy 2 years ago from here that was making minimum wage. He went there and made $12 an hour 2 years ago. So I did call local people that I know, and mostly in Northeast Ohio.
And why I ask this, if I'm looking at this correctly, a mechanic is considered a laborer 40. And that wage is between $13.05 and $15. I just reviewed an administrative assistant position for the health department at $20, up to $20 an hour. So that's where I was questioning, based on the expertise, based on the skill level, are we comparable for a mechanic with these wages?
Our mechanic would be someone that could perform timely oil changes and sharpening blades weekly. Not necessarily that, well, the reason it's not so high, they're not doing all the maintenance on the motors. This is more of a preventative maintenance type position. And this, to be honest, that one position would be more than likely maybe a retiree even that has the background and would want to work 2 or 3 days a week. That's about a 10 to 15 hour a week job during the season. So it's not a high profile job. It's not we're not going to get a mechanic to come in that's making $30 an hour somewhere else. And that it's low hours per week.
So did you say what the overall increase percentage was? Was there an overall
Some of
2%,
these-
3%,
yes.
up to 10%?
Some up to 10%, some of them, 8 to 10%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, this on the agenda for Monday. Thank you. That's all I have.
Streets and highways?
Jim is not here. We have no request in front of us, but I would like to ask administration if they had started to give the streets for 2022, the list of projected streets that they're going to be paving, if they had something to present to council in the very near future. Since we're talking about the budget, I want to make sure that we have a list of streets that we're looking to pave.
Yes, as you know, this is the time that we're starting to put that all together. So engineering is working on that at the present time. So you will have a list just as we have done in the past as well. So we will get that out to you. And I believe they always reach out to you as well and ask you if you have any streets you'd be one on the list.
So we'll have it very soon prior to approving the budget, that list.
Well, I don't know that it's usually prior to approving the budget, generally speaking. I mean, right now we are still paving. That is still going to be going on for a while until the weather completely stops us from doing that. So that is a piece and a part of it too that they look at when they do go out to rate all the streets. And it's a part of the rating of the streets as well, looking at the areas of where we can get the best rates for the proposals that we go up for. So I can let you know, a date next week if you want me to.
But just before, I guess, just because there's going to be budgeting funding for street paving, and just kind of would like to have some sense of, what streets we're
Sure,
looking
I'll
for.
see exactly where they're at on it. And
Okay.
I'll give you a date.
All right, thank you. That is all for streets and highway.
All right, we're at finance. The first piece of finance that we're going to look at is Ms. Walter, I'll probably need you. It's please prepare an ordinance to appropriate $50,000 from the unappropriated balance of the 1229 home fund. This is to cover the expenses of home activities. Ms. Walter, you just want to explain a little bit about home in case anyone's not.
Good evening. The city is a member of the Start Hearing Home Consortium. So we receive funding through the county along with Alliance, and the county receives funding for the balance of the county outside of the 3 major cities. The home funding allows us to provide down payment assistance and full rehabilitation assistance for qualified low and moderate income homeowners in the city. And this appropriation, we do have some encumbered funding at this time, but We have that all committed to projects, which is great. We have 7 pending homebuyer projects in various stages. So those are low-to-moderate income individuals that are purchasing homes within the city. We are paying, assisting with the down payment funds and also to bring items up to minimum code. So just a little bit about the projects, and we really have a lot going on right now, which is a great thing. We do have the funding through the county, so we just need an appropriation to carry us through the rest of the year.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you. I'll go ahead and sign this, put this on the agenda. The next piece we have is please appropriate $10,000 in the services account in the yard waste collecting. Funding for this request comes from scrap funds collected by the street department. Ms. Meyer?
Yes.
This is the first meeting. Am I to understand that we got this $10,000 off of the scrap we picked up off the side of the street?
That's more, Tom, do you know?
I do.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
It was,
Do you mind?
Good evening, everyone. This is different. Mr. Lewis, to answer your question, we cleaned up our backyard. The garage area had a bunch of scrap. Through the catch basin programs and things, we had a bunch of old things laying around, and the folks in the street department worked real hard to get that all scrapped out. And now I need it for yard waste because I want to try and get every leaf I can off the roads and out of the catch basins. So I figure if they'll bring it to the street department, I'll collect it. You just need yard waste containers. Right now they're open until 6 o'clock every night this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and next week. I just want to try and get all the leaves off the road I can. So that's where I'm at.
when you say that, you mean by having citizens bring their waste, not
Yes.
through any kind of leaf collection system in the city?
No, if they'll bring it to me, I'll collect it and I'll get rid of it, and that way, it's much safer when the snow starts to fly. It's much safer for motorcycles in this weather, and it stays out of the catch basin. And Tony Albrecht is happy over things.
Anyone else have any questions? Ms. Lippman?
Yes, it says that the funds are going into 1206 Municipal Motor Vehicle Tax Fund.
Yes, that services and contracts, that's where our Kimball account is.
That's where your what?
Kimball account is.
Oh, your Kimball account. Okay, just it caught me off guard saying motor vehicle tax.
Well, it comes out of the garage. There's 3 separate accounts, and quite frankly, Mrs. Whitman, I'm not as familiar as I probably should be. I'm still learning the facets of the budget. But it's where the Kimball account comes from, and we felt like we would best be able to pay for that. There's actually a grant for yard waste, and we've run through all of that, and I just want to continue it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I've signed it for the agenda on Monday. The next piece we have is please prepare a warrant to appropriate from the unappropriated balance of the general fund, $3,000 for income tax refund. Looks like the release established funds expenses related to income tax refunds for the year ending December 31st, 2021. Does anybody have any questions related to this? All right, I'll go ahead and sign. Next, please prepare legislation to make certain transfers from the 2021 appropriations within the street department, taking $2,000 out of hospital line down, placing it into refunds for the income tax refunds to get us through the end of the year. Any questions? This will be an actual legislation. This won't be a transfer. Okay. Then we're going to go ahead and do all these transfers real quick, and then we'll get into the budget, just to knock them out of the way. The first one from the building department is removing $1,500 from travel and seminar, putting it in the 3% assessment fee, and this is to realign the budget. Any questions? $6,500 from supplies and materials and placing it into service and contracts to realign the budget for increased need for services and contracts. Any questions? Also in the building department, removal of $7,000 from the salary, $2,000 from supplies and postage, placing in service and contract for the increase. Ms. Bourne, have you court, have you used Bourne?
Good evening, everybody.
This particular piece of legislation is to move from the salary line to basically the services and contracts line. That is where Jimmy is paid from, Jimmy Johnson is paid from, and we have a new code enforcement officer on board, and he is working with him, so he will be picking up some extra hours. So that is basically to cover those extra hours for the rest of the year for Jimmy.
So the total is $9,000 for this one, and $6,500, so we're looking at $15,500 for 2 months.
No, let me check. I would have to get more information from this one. I do apologize. This was given to us by the building department. They only gave me explanation for the $7,000 for Jimmy. I would imagine, not quote me because I have not talked to them, but there's other services that meet our contracts that we have on board with them already that will need to be addressed. So I can get more information for that if you'd like.
Thank you. I'm personally just going to pull those ones out to the side and get more answers.
Okay.
The next one we have is taking $10,000 out of Veterans Memorial Park and supplies, placing it into service and contracts, pay for maintenance improvements of Veterans Memorial Park. Any questions? Pretty standard for Judge. Administration reduced unemployment compensation by $6,250, putting it into sick leave. This to realize the budget pay accumulated sick leave due to unexpected retirement. Administration reduced the salary of clerk by $1,000, $8,000 for hospital dental, $200 in travel and seminar, $1,000 supplies, placement and service and contract to realign the budget. Any questions? Ms. Lippman?
Can I ask who is the unexpected retirement that we're, I mean, or not even who, but just what position is being, is
Ms. Covey, one.
retiring?
You just want to say everything, we'll get through these, this is good questions.
Yeah, because
And then we'll come to you after this meeting, so.
I'm just going to say about it.
Actually, there's a few. The retirement was not so much unexpected. We knew that was coming. That was in our building department. But we had a few folks leave from, I believe it was the clerk of courts, which we did not know about when we allocated before. So those were departures that we did not know. And we do have a payout for them. So
there were 3 positions or more retirements, are you saying?
1 retirement and 2 that actually left their position. I don't believe they were retirements from the clerk of court. The clerk of court does not go through me, so I would have to research that information. If you want more information on that, I can tell you that the building was a retirement that we knew was coming at the end of October.
Thank you.
In regards to this one, the one that we turned off, the 10,200 in contracts, what's that? We're on a roll tonight.
As we have gone through, we've had some unexpected legal fees that we've used for some outside sources for, and so those will be covering any of those anticipated fees. We've had arbitrations. This has been a big year for contracts. All the contracts have been up, and we've had a couple issues that have been needed to be addressed, so that is what that is for.
Miscellaneous accounts, reduce special events by $350 and place it into insurance. Police reduced the salary by $20,000, comp paid for $20,000, and disability retention, putting in disability retention. This is to realign the 21 budget to pay Ohio Police and Fire pension through 12/31/21. I just want to make sure that we are preparing our budget for 2022 with this in mind.
Yeah,
Quite a large transfer.
yeah. Yes,
Yeah, whoever wants to answer either or, it doesn't matter.
Actually, this is a number that Stephanie and I have discussed, so you want to add to that, Stephanie?
Yeah, I know, I did check it for next year, and the number is more in line with where I think we should be than what we had this year.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you. I think we're about halfway there. Safety, adjust the salary by 1,000 in the TRS. I'll take it, I'll just keep going. If I don't have a question, yelling at you do, because I'm just going to start trying to roll. Law department, reduced travel seminar by 500, put in professional news. Law department reduced the bond by 100, service and contracts by 4,000, placing into supplies, material, and postage. Law director reducing the salary by 10,000, the hospital for 10,000, service and contracts 20,000.
I actually worked with Mr. Richard on this. This is the same case scenario. We have had to go outside on a few of things that we've had to address, and there was some extra in both of these lines, and so he is going to graciously pay for some of that through the law department's budget.
So when you say some things that we've had to address, this is that regarding arbitration with employees, I assume, contracts, such as the union contracts and things of that nature. And can we confidently say matters that have already been brought to council's attention in one
Yes,
form or another?
yes, I'm comfortable with that.
Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you. Community court reducing the salary by 200, placing it in Medicare. Auditor reduce unemployment compensation by 13,000, real property tax by 5,000, city state collection fees by 16,000, state examination by 4,400, transfer grants out 14,700, placing it into street lighting services. Miss Meyer. That's a big one.
Yeah, this is another that this year's budget, we did not have enough in, and I've already talked with Lori about next year of getting it back. I couldn't tell you why, but in 2020, there was way more in the 2020 budget than this one. This is all of our street lighting, and I do know that at least on average, it's probably a few thousand more per month this year than it was last year, but there definitely was under budgeted. The number that we gave Lori was not. So, but we have looked at that, and it's for the upcoming budget, it is where it should be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any ads coming before?
Well, yeah, Stephanie pretty much addressed it too, but some of those numbers are based off of previous years. And so in previous years, Laura, you're basing it off of, you may have a little bit of a decrease or an increase, but like Stephanie said, we've talked through a few things this year and increased some things on the budget side.
My last one, auditor reduced fees by 500, placing them in the Massillon Museum holding account. And those two pieces that I kind of set aside, I'm going to put them on the left side in the paper clip so that you immediately identify. All right, let's go ahead. If everybody's ready, we can go ahead and move on to the discussion about the budget. I know tonight we did request that the street department be in attendance, the police and the fire. This is these department heads' opportunities to come to us, tell us what they have accomplished over the past year, what they're looking to accomplish next year. And just keep us up to speed and give us an opportunity to meet them and talk to them about their expenditures for the next year. I'll let you go ahead.
Yes, tonight we have the street department, the fire department, and the police department. So at this time, I'm going to ask Tom Burst-Gasser to come up from streets. Familiar face in a different spot.
Good evening, everyone, again. Well, I can't tell you all about all of the accomplishments for last year because I only started in July. But I can tell you this, that since I've begun in this area, I've learned a great deal. I've learned a great deal of perspective. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that it takes a city to run a village. If you try and do things from a police perspective or a fire perspective or a wastewater perspective or a street perspective, and you have tunnel vision, which I did, your eyes get opened up when you have it. You sit in a different chair, so to speak. And when your eyes start to open up, you see things more globally. And so I learned a great deal of how the street department interacts with the police department, certainly with the fire department occasionally, and with each other, Parks and Rec and wastewater all together. And I had no idea that all of this was going on. So I guess what I bring to the table, in addition to my quick learning curve, is that I realized that I think the street department had an operational focus. And in all of my years as the fire chief, I learned that with incident command structure, you not only have operations, but you have planning, you have logistics, you have finance, and you have administration. And I hope to bring back to the table some of that planning, logistics, finance, and administration part, because our operations are pretty good for what we have. I think that we have a great group of folks down there that does things routinely, day to day, and sometimes we kind of overlook those things. If the grass needs mowed here today, it didn't get mowed there today, and once the grass grows at the same rate, everything needs to be mowed at the same time. And we only have a limited number of resources, a number of personnel, and they really do try to do the best they can. Again, I think we need a little bit more efficiency, and I hope we bring that to the table. I think there's a great deal of planning that needs to go on. I think you've seen that from us. We returned some money last year out of the budget, and one of the things that I said was that I didn't feel like the residents wanted to see money returned. I felt like they wanted to see smaller streets paved and things like that. So we paved a number of small streets. We can't pave big streets. I don't have enough personnel. But I do have enough personnel, and I do have a little paver, and they do a pretty darn good job when they're task-oriented, able to be met by the resources that we have. And so I hope to bring more of that to the table. And right now we're focused on snow plowing, snow, salt. We need a place for salt. We've needed a place for salt for a long time. I think I have a solution for this year. We will not have salt problem this year. Next year, I hope to have a more permanent solution. And you'll probably hear from me in the coming months about that. That's all I have to say. I'm excited. I think that we're moving forward in the right direction. I think you'll be pleased. So if anyone has any questions,
Yes, I'm just looking at a little bit of this, and some of this might be for Lori. I know you explained this to me once before, but others might have questions. When we look at the street department and we see street resurfacing, page 6 on the side-by-side that we're referencing, we see a 1.45 million supplemental expense, and now it's back to the original 30 that you had budgeted in 2021. Where's that coming from?
I'm sorry, Mr. Lewis, which one were you speaking about, the 130 and the 40? Or,
If you look at the 435 street department fund, you see 30,000 was budgeted in 2021. It's the same budget you proposed this year. When you see the supplemental expense budget, you see 1.45 million added. Is that just through all the appropriations we made from the
yes, that's it, round 2.
Thank you.
Round one is actually written in the original, the budget that you have in front of you that Mrs. Kramer was asking about earlier, that $1,450,000. That is actually the round one that we requested a list from today. And the other one that Mr. Lewis, you were talking about, was round 2. So.
Ms. Kramer?
Yes, in the equipment, are we looking to purchase any equipment this year on your want list for 2022 for the street department?
If I might, I know you want to, Mr. Lewis, if you don't mind, I'd just like to address that 30,000. We have, I put in there for special projects. The reason for that is that if you look at Valerie on the northwest side, to try and trim Valerie on the northwest side takes every one of my people, and there's a lot of twists and turns. And so I felt like a better solution would be to contract that out and then have my folks do some of the smaller projects that they can do, because once I send more people out to different things, instead of one focused area that they may not be more as familiar with, and you let the experts, in terms of, when I say experts, I have a bunch of experts. My problem is that the experts in terms of tree trimming, in terms of brush management, in terms of landscaping. Valerie seemed like a better place to go for that. Cutting down trees. Sometimes in some of the undedicated alleys, we just had one today off of Girdle Road. I have a 75-foot tall tree or higher. It's 50 years old. The trunk is 4 foot around. My people can't cut that tree down. It's not safe, and I would put places in jeopardy. So I would leave that to the haymakers or the barons or the Treccas, and so we would contract that out. Instead of just paying for that outright in my services and contracts, I thought the most honest way to do that is to build that into special projects and then farm that out that way. Thank you. Mrs. Prima, I think Lori.
In my budget talks with the street department, they, back to your question about maybe some of the needs, one of the needs that they had told me that they needed during our budget conversation was what they called a big dump truck. So when you look at the 1201 2530, there's $186,000 budgeted in that, and that is for the large or big dump truck.
I noticed in here the traffic department is all part of that 1201. What would constitute the traffic department as compared to the street department?
Mr. Lewis, I'm still learning that piece of it myself. Traffic's engineering, not engineering, but traffic engineering and safety department are a number of agencies. That's where your electricians are. Your electricians run the timing of the traffic signals and coordinations. It's also your signage department. And so we have signage and safety department that operate in that traffic field. That's where the salary line item that says safety comes from, is there are actually 4 positions there, 3 of the electricians and then the sign.
And then the .2 income tax, we have it feeds into the 1201, correct?
Yes.
Any other questions? Mr. Hernkey?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Burgasser, you alluded to salt storage. That's what I was going to ask you about. What salt storage facilities do we currently have?
We have 2 storage facilities on site at the city garage, and we have about 1,500 tons. I'm in discussion with Republic Steel, 401 Road, and they're going to store another 1,000 tons for us.
Is that what you alluded to as the plan for this year and
Yes.
looking at a more permanent solution maybe next year?
Yes, sir.
Because my memory is correct, I think our storage capacity is relatively low compared to our neighbors, and I think we still have one that is probably duct-taped together.
It's my intention to get a 6,000 ton facility.
I would appreciate that, and I hope that you move on that very quickly for next year too, because I know it's needed. And
Thank
it
you.
has a lot of things. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else? Thank you all.
Okay, now I will have the police department come up. Chief Moser?
Good afternoon. Just wanted to start out by, saying that I really appreciate the officers that we have. I know everybody, hears good and bad, but really, until you do the job, you really have no understanding for the things that they go through and the things that they do every day. We have a tremendous group of men and women working on the police department. They go out every day and they just work tirelessly to serve the public and do the best that they can. For instance, Parole Officer Slider right there was working a side job earlier today, directing traffic. Directing traffic can be a very thankless job. We actually had somebody come down to the police department raving about what a great job she did, wanting to give her a gift card. Now, couldn't accept that, ethics laws and all. But I think that's just an example of the things that our people are doing every day out there. And whether they get acknowledged or not, it's really important that they know what kind of job that they're doing. With that being said, probably our biggest thing for next year is hiring and retaining. We're currently at 46 officers. We just recently lost 2 that resigned. They're still on our books right now, but we'll be at 44 real shortly. They left for another job at Talmadge, police job. I don't know if you're familiar, but the hiring process and the prospects out there it's slim, it's tough. We gave one test earlier this year, had 23 applicants pass the test, and there wasn't one that met the standards that we wanted for an officer at Massillon. We gave a second test later, had 6 people take the test. 1 is still in the process, so we might be able to get 1 out of that. We are currently looking at other things we can do out of the box, thinking to try to attract more people to come and want to work for us and do the job here. A lot of that's contractual, which I can't get into now because we are doing negotiations. But that is probably the main focus for us for next year. We also have the records management system that will be
hopefully up and in place. It's supposed to be up and in place sometime here in 2022, which will be a real good thing. It'll be a time saver, and it will give our officers a lot more information out on the road and be able to share information to make their jobs easier and safer. The other hot topic that normally comes up is our cruisers. We currently have 3 cruisers, daily cruisers I'm talking, that are over 100,000 miles. They've all been scheduled to be replaced this year. We've ordered the vehicles, but if you know anything about the new car market, we have received one that was ordered in March, and the other 2 we haven't received yet. Our other cars, we do have 4 other cars that are over 100,000 miles, but they're not daily. They're the SRO cars and the traffic car. We do plan on getting 3 new cars next year. Hopefully they'll come to replace the other ones that are now starting to climb up in their mileage. But I think our cruiser situation is pretty good. We're keeping up on it. And by doing that, we're keeping our maintenance down. I mean, there's always going to be some maintenance, tires, brakes, whatnot, in place. But, I mean, I could go through the budget items, but really our budget is not that much different from previous years. So if you have any questions, feel free.
I know that we've talked a lot about wanting to see how we could help, you know, with the recruitment, like fund it, especially, I mean, we can't obviously recruit, we can fund programming. Given the current budget you have, do you feel that you have sufficient funding available to you to be able to actively recruit and get the best?
But again, part of this is contractual, so I really can't talk on that right now. One thing we are doing is which is not contractual, so I can talk about it. We're opening up to candidates who are not certified police officers to be able to send them through the academy and pay them while they're doing that. We're going to be doing that on this next test, which is the 30th of November, is our next test. So we're hoping to bring more people in, get more people in that way. Yeah, I wish I could go into more of it with the contraction.
Actually, that was the exact idea that I had about the OPADA and us paying while they're going through it.
Yes, yeah.
And
Yeah,
you
that's
have
already in
appropriate
place.
funding for that already.
Yes, because that would mainly be out of the salary line, and we've put the salary up for 48 officers, so we're not going to hire unless we're below that, so the money is there.
Have we considered paying for the OPADA training itself?
That will be part of it.
Right.
Yes.
Anyone else have any questions? Ms. Lippin?
When you're saying that we had 23 candidates take the test the time before last, what did you see as, or was there a theme as to what those individuals were missing that we're looking for?
I think what you saw mostly, that was right in the middle of COVID, and a lot of the police academies were either shutting down or delayed significantly. We have found that we've gotten our best candidates, like right when they get out of the academy. So I think on that test, we probably had people that have been out of the academy for a while. And let's just be honest, if they've been in this economy, if they've been out of the academy for a while and they haven't got a job somewhere, there's a reason.
Do we have a resident requirement for
No.
our officers?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Lombardi?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Chief, are there any job fairs at the academy or anything like that, or any type of marketing recruitment that is done through the academies?
Not necessarily through the academies, but what we do is we send representatives from the police department to all the local academies in our area to personally recruit from the academies.
Okay. And you have appropriate funds to be able to do that?
Yes, it's just, a couple hours, I teach at a couple academies, so just one night I'll go out there and talk with them, hand them out some pamphlets and tell them when the class is and get them the link to where they can apply and go from there.
Okay.
But we found that's probably the best recruiting tool we have, is just that personal touch, going around. We get a lot of the younger officers to go with us because, they can relate a lot better to these candidates.
Thank you.
Well,
Chief, we've had to do some transfers recently about comp time and overtime. Do you think you have the proper or the appropriate measures in place to make sure that we manage that throughout the 2022 year?
depends on how many people we can get. To be honest, it is going to be totally dependent on how many people we can attract, how many people we can hire. I think we're looking at next year, probably conservatively, 4 to 8 people retiring. And unless we can start getting a lot more people to take these tests, I found it to be true that if you have 20 people take a test, you probably have 2 candidates. It's about a 10%. And that's held up over time. It's about 10%. So if we want to hire 3 or 4 people, we better have 30 or 40 show up to the test and take it. If we're going to need to hire 8 people next year, between however many tests we run, we need to have that many people show up.
Ms. Livian?
Do we do advertising for when the tests are given?
Yes, civil service, they go through Indeed and several other places where they advertise for the testing.
They being whom? They being whom?
Civil service.
I just didn't know if we did that or if they did
No, our civil service department does the advertising. We do more word of mouth, getting around to different agencies, different academies. A lot of our officers know other officers, other departments, and they're young enough that they've been through the academy fairly recently, so they may know people in their class that might be a good candidate. There are also people in the community. Since we're opening up the academy part of it, I know that many of our officers have said, hey, so-and-so would be a good candidate. They're married, they've got a family, they can't just quit their job to go to the academy. So this is going to open up some of those doors.
Do you have a contact for like veterans, service members or prior service members might be a funnel for
Yes.
future
Yeah.
police officers?
Yeah, we do have those contacts.
Thank you.
Well,
Ms. Kramer?
How many local academies are there in our area?
but you have Wayne County, Smithville has a part-time academy. You have Akron, Kent, Stark State, you have one down in New Philly. Those are really all the local academies.
Are they seeing a decrease in enrollment?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well,
Mr. Gray?
Chief, the tests you talked about that need to be administered, are those administered by the Civil Service Commission?
yes, they are.
And is there a limit to the number of tests that we can run a year?
No, there's no limit. Normally, we have to go through all of the people that are on the eligibility list before we can give another test, but recently that's been pretty quick.
All right, so is there additional expense to the city to run additional tests
There's a cost per test,
to the city?
yes. We do not charge the applicants. That's another thing we're trying to do to get people in. We're not charging them for this.
Okay. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Chief. Obviously, we're very interested in this, and just keep us apprised as we go on.
thank you.
Thank you, Chief Moser. And last but not least will be Chief Hack from Fire.
Good evening, everyone. Much like the street department, and the reason for our transition is the move from Chief Ferguson to the street department. But that has set off a plethora of changes as far as personnel this past year and over the past 18 months. And we're still continuing through that transition phase. But in the last 18 months, you have a new fire chief, you have a new assistant chief, and we have 5 new captains in the ranks as far as the supervision and administration of the department. And I will tell you that, I'll let you gauge me, but the other 4 individuals, or other 6 individuals, excuse me, have jumped in with both feet and are doing a tremendous job of leading the department and their companies when they go out. And that goes for everyone. It's been a tough year with regards to COVID and some other things we've been dealing with last year. We thought we were going to see a little bit of a reprieve when the summer hit. And here in the fall, COVID and COVID-related issues have picked back up. We're seeing more and more patients that are COVID positive. We are still continuing to take the precautions that we need to as far as equipment, vaccinations, and those things that help us do that in a safe manner. And hopefully we do see a turning point after the first of the year in relation to that. But again, I do appreciate their efforts. They have done a tremendous job dealing with those differences and the changes that COVID has brought. And the firefighters have jumped on board with some of the transition and things that we've changed. One of the things I did learn under Chief Bergeser was that 2 people cannot take the brunt of the operations and administration of the department. So we have taken all the tasks, all the operations and programs, and we have divvied it up amongst 12 captains, 3 assistant chiefs, myself, and the Fire Prevention Bureau. And they have jumped on it, like I said, grabbed it with both horns and have run with it. We actually had to scale a couple of them back a little bit on what they were doing and how fast they wanted to do it. But again, it's become a little bit more efficient. I know it makes it easier on me, knowing that they have the program and they have it under control. And they are doing a tremendous job. The other aspect, and sometimes the department or part of the department doesn't get recognized as much as our Fire Prevention Bureau. Captain Gano, Inspector Wagner, Inspector Canfora do a tremendous job, not only in the prevention side of it, but the education. In October, they spent quite a bit of time in schools. They've also gone out in conjunction with the National Fire Safety Council and some grant money and some things that they've done. Captain Gano, if you've ever heard, is our fire club, and has been a big hit out in the schools. Takes a little ribbon for that, but he does a tremendous job, and it's amazing what that little mascot can do from a fire safety standpoint. But that was all obtained through grant money and applications that they have taken on their own to go out and obtain the money and done so. They've gone out and got a couple other grants, the one we just talked about last week with the FM Global and some of the equipment, and they're going to continue to do that. One of the things that we're going to look at doing next year is to add another inspector. Fire prevention is a very important part of our job. The 3 of them are busy. They work in conjunction with code enforcement and the building department, and together they do a nice job. But we also miss sometimes. And the additional inspector we're projecting will give us the ability to add about 50 to 60% the number of inspections that we do a year, which currently year to date we've done 202 inspections. Most of that is based on that's required, whether it be nursing homes, schools, daycare centers, childcare centers, or new constructions, and our people handle the fire suppression and alarm system inspections of that. But we miss out on a lot of things. For example, restaurants. Every 6 months, they have the hood system inspected by a third party that's licensed to do that. What that company does is send us a report that yes, the hood system is in good shape. What they don't do is the fire extinguishers, the means of egress, and other things, emergency lighting. So the plan is to have the next individual that would step into that role kind of mimic and follow those companies in the restaurants and things like that, so they can pick up where they leave off. And the goal is to ensure everyone's safety from a fire standpoint. We're not out there to pick on people. We're not out there to give people a hard time. We're all out there from a code compliance from the fire side. And we want to help individuals. We want to help businesses do that. A couple things it does. One, obviously it keeps employees safe, keeps the patrons safe, employees, clients, whatever it may be. But it also helps the owner of the business or the property limit their liability if something would happen. And if something happens in their fire that it's not in compliance, they could be held liable for take a significant hit. So that's the goal, is to help people obtain the compliance with the fire code, be as safe as they possibly can be, find different ways of doing that, and the expert inspector will do that. And we'll look to do that next year. From a vehicle standpoint, I'll give you an update. Probably as frustrated as I am with the med unit, that was scheduled for October. The box is done, the chassis is there, it's missing a microchip. And we're looking at probably first quarter of next year. So the manufacturing has about 3 microchips that use to move the trucks around to different parts of the assembly line. They pull the microchip out from the next truck, move it to a different location. When they get an order in of microchips, they put the 10 to 15 that they receive into the trucks, put the body onto the chassis, and then deliver them. So that's what we're waiting on, is a microchip. It's frustrating, I know, but I will say this, I've also heard that Ford is planning or discussing scrapping the 2021 chassis microchip and just going to 2022, which I heard that, I was glad that we want the 2022 chassis. So if we were at 2021 chassis, I think we're going to have problems. So, but we are looking at something in probably first quarter of 2022 for the ambulance to arrive. As far as the equipment is concerned, we've had to make a couple adjustments based on supplies. We've done that, and they are continuing to do that. And I will tell you, the Suffolk is working hard to make sure that they have the supplies that are ready to go. And we are still currently looking at an April delivery, although I would guess if things continue on a supply chain issue that we may be looking a couple months after that. Other than that, the current fleet, the 2018 engines that we do have are running great. Firefighters love operating off of them. But the rest of the fleet is starting to age, and because of that, we've seen an increase in the budget from our services and contracts, and a big part of that is the maintenance cost. The tower truck is 31 years old. We've had some issues with it. Those issues are starting to impact the safety of firefighters. And we are seeing an increase in the maintenance cost of that vehicle itself. We have a 1995 frontline engine or pump down at Station 4 that we continue to repair and band-aid until we can find other means to do that. And it's just, one, reliability, and 2, just the cost of maintenance is increasing just to keep it up and running. So we're looking at finding ways to maybe update the fleet in an economic way. We'll look at grant on the city with that aspect. So, as far as personnel, again, we've spent most of the year anywhere from 1 to 3 people down. I share Chief Moser's frustration in the testing process. We've hired 2. We're still 1 short. And we're looking at different avenues on how to increase candidate pool going forward, whether it's testing, whether it's other avenues. We're still looking at many different directions. So hopefully that trend continues. And again, it's not just police and fire, it's across the board. For some reason, people just don't seem to want to work today. And firefighting for me, I love it. It's a decent job with decent paid wage, with great benefits and a great schedule. We just can't seem to get the younger generation to jump on board and drop their game controller. So we'll continue to work on that going forward. Anyone have any questions?
Yes, Chief Hack, I'm just looking over this. We do see, and this isn't any kind of, I'm just curious. We do see a couple $100,000 increase in salary, and then I do notice $100,000 in comp paid from the previous budget to this one.
Okay, let me handle the comp paid first, and that's a moving target. It's just difficult to hit, and that depends on the demographics of the department a little bit. Older firefighters, or I should say more veteran firefighters, have a tendency to take overtime, earn, and pay. Younger firefighters tend to build comp time, and if they have a lot of comp time, we end up taking the comp pay. We did, I believe, last year proposed $325,000. It was cut to $225,000 for this year's budget. I think we've done transfers that's brought it right back up to $325,000. So a couple of things that why I left it at $325,000, at least for Lori's review. One, I'm seeing more and more people move to the pay and not so much comp time. And hopefully with the additional two, when we find a third person, we can cut down the overtime and comp earned, which should reduce the amount of comp paid out. Again, it's a moving target, it's difficult. We thought we had it at $325,000, $225,000 is we'll make it. So that's where we're at with the comp pay. I know you've seen probably about $102,000 in budget transfers this year go into that, and that's where we're at. So as far as the salary increase, about 76% of that is a 3% contractual increase based on the contract that was passed and voted on back in July, I think it was, which it was nice. It was a nice easy process, a lot of hard work and a lot of cohesiveness on both sides of the table to get that done in a quick manner. It's probably the easiest negotiations I've ever been through in the 24 years I've been here. So kudos to the administration and the union reps for doing that. But that's a 3% increase. That's probably about 76% of it. And then the other additional is the inspector position for that.
Thank you. So, anyone else? All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Lori, who do you have planned on coming on the 20
Are we not doing this right now here?
No, I think we're moving pretty well, and I've had a couple of people request that we do that.
Okay. I was planning on the 27th, which I've been moved to the 29th, or the 22nd, I'm sorry. You had asked for the law department, I believe, and engineering was who else was going to come at that time.
Mr. Bartos, can you please get that to Mr. Richard if the law department can prepare on the 29th? And then also going to speak with Stephanie Meyer. I'm going to also ask that the auditor be able to speak to us about her specific budget on the 29th as well.
Okay.
So engineering, law department, auditor.
Okay.
And then that was a good kind of moment to then stop and look and see what else we want to address from there. Any other questions regarding the budget this evening? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have for finance, but we do have one thing that brought to us as a committee of the whole. It is the redistricting. So since there was a census in 2020, we have received the results back, and it is the responsibility of the legislative branch to handle any redistricting needs. The goal is you're supposed to have your wards broken up in as close to even as possible population-wise. So a few months back, I did speak to the mayor, and I asked her if she had anyone on her staff that could at least give us some framework and an idea of what to look at, seeing as how we don't actually effectively have any staff that could really break this down. So she did deal with Dave McCune, or Ms. McCure, and some of the staff in the engineering department, and asked them to look at the census numbers and whatnot. So What you have in front of you is a proposal from the engineering department that would meet the needs of balancing out the wards. You see growth in the 6th ward. So the 6th ward did have to lose some population, and then that population is basically distributed throughout the city. So you give a little bit to the 5th, a little bit here, a little bit there, and you just kind of trickle it throughout the city. The other thing is, if you're questioning as to why certain areas were taken the way they were, you do have to follow census tracts that are set by the federal government. You can't just pick a street and cut. So you do have to follow a census tract. So if they take a section, they have to take that whole tract. They can't take a half a tract or anything else. So that's why things are broken down the way they are. We did thank you, Mr. Mealy, for providing us this larger map. We can go through it as detailed as you want, but you do see a large chunk in the Wampler Park area that would, out of the 6th ward, and place that into the 5th ward. And then the 5th ward is taking areas down by the old Republic Steel, close to the river, and moving into the 4th ward. Likewise, if you are over there by the Speedway, or the Bell Store, on the Bell Store on the corner of 6th and Lincoln Way, and there across the viaduct, there's a little square there that would be moving into the 2nd ward. North Sippo, or the Reservoir, which is now divided in half between the 1st and 3rd, would completely fall into the 1st. The 3rd ward, which now runs along railroad tracks on its southernmost side, would extend all the way to, what is that, Walnut into Ridgeville, picking up some homes in that area. And then that's it. I already talked about what the 4th ward would grab. So any questions or discussion? I mean, it's pretty generic, right? Ms. Green.
I understand moving around to get the numbers where we want them to be, so they're more or less even throughout the city. But is this our only option, or do they consider other options and, provide us other pictures, I guess? Or is this my only option that I just have to accept it?
We can do as much digging and research as we want, but this is the option that they put in front of us. I mean, technically it's our responsibility, so this is just a...
So this is a starting point?
This is a starting point. We can do whatever adjustments we would like to make as long as we follow the rules that we are given, not by the engineering department, but by the process. Ms. Lynn?
These recommendations are given to us by our internal engineering department.
Correct.
Is OHM part of that?
They do not play a part in this at all, I do not believe.
Has there been in the past any other time that this has occurred?
Every 10 years.
10 years ago?
Yeah, every 10 years we do this.
Okay. And has there ever been an opportunity for us to go outside of our own department to get more of a, I'll say, an unbiased opinion or options, as Ms. Kramer was indicating? Or have we always just, as we've done in the past, we just use whatever recommendations given to us and typically it's passed, no questions asked?
I cannot speak to how the no questions asked aspect, because none of us were on council the last time this was done. But I guess going ahead and reiterate, we as a council can do anything we want. If we want to contract this out, we say we don't like this for whatever reason, we can go contract with whoever we want, and they can draft this up any way we want them to. We can sit here, we can ask for all the census tracts, because if you look at these bottom things here, you see those little numbers, that's the population by census tract. So if you want, we can ask for that, and we can sit here and start pulling and pushing the way we want. It's up to you guys. If you have a specific objection, you can let us know what that objection is, and maybe we can address that. I don't know, I just wanted to give you guys something to look at.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I know the answer is going to be because that's what they did 10 years ago, but the Community Development Committee deals with matters referring to redistricting. Why is this not in community development?
We put a community development.
It's just a,
Yeah.
why is it being consistent?
Yeah, this is just, they put it in here, so I figured a discussion, we can put it in where we want. All right. We want to put it in community development, because it's community development. Ms. Britton?
What's the time frame that we need to make a decision and have this,
Mr. Bartos, would this be by end of the year?
Mr. Lewis, members of council, I believe the applicable section of the revised code sets a timeline that effectively runs to the end of the year. If not, then it is set by the safety service director of the city. But then I believe the section continues on to say that council can then make adjustments as they see fit, really at any time. So I think I gave you a copy previously. I don't have it on me right now, but I can find that copy for you. But this is a process set by the Ohio Revised Code, pretty much to comply with the one person, one vote principle. It's under both the U.S. Constitution, sure, and the state constitution as well. Any other questions?
I guess if we move forward, are there specific concerns any council people have, or? Yes, Ms. Green?
I'd like to take a look at this since this is the first that I've seen this, this large of a diagram and get back to you. There's some things that I have some concerns about. So just give me some time and let me look through it and possibly offer options. Thank you.
Mr. Bartos?
And I was able to quickly Google that. It's 731.06, Division of City and Awards of the Ohio Revised Code. Never to be outdone, the Ohio Revised Code sets it for 90 days after the first day of October following the census year. So always confusing, but 90 days after the first day of October.
So, the end of December.
Yeah, so the end, yes, exactly. But yeah, easily could have said it that way, but chose. Thank you.
All right, well then, Ms. Rowland, if you could, unless anyone objects, you can place this in community development. And, yes, Ms. Green?
Do we want to put this on the agenda for next week, or do we want to let Ms. Green make some questions that were there before we put it on the agenda? We do have some time. What is it for you?
Oh, I mean, if we go full 3 readings, getting it on the agenda with meaning 3 readings exactly. If we have to amend it, it would back up regardless.
You can do special meetings.
Yeah, I'm saying if we amend it, it would back it up regardless, so we could put it on the agenda and then it's just there on the schedule.
Mr. Lewis?
Since this came through committee of the whole, we got an extra meeting in there that we have to vote to give a second reading.
There you go.
It's not a non-sponsored,
This is not an unsponsored, non-sponsored. This is a legislation request that came to the committee of the whole. As such, we assign it to community development, and now it is community developments, and if community developments want to sign off on it, it gets its 2 signatures, and we'll go up for first reading next week. Rule number 28 is only referring to when you try to put things on a regular scheduled agenda. It requires voting. That's not what tonight's meeting is, so it's being moved over to community development.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
A couple things. One, I want to thank Fred Warner and our engineering department who put this together. It's a lot more complicated than it looks. And if you don't have the data sets, it's going to be very difficult for some agents to, because each block has a different number, and you got to have all the blocks. And unless you have all that data, it's really difficult to put together how this is split out. We didn't move anybody from anybody currently in their wards as far far as moving current council people, so they weren't redistricted into a different ward. That wasn't something we were looking at, but it just so happens to come out that way. I think he did a very good job based on what we had. If you look at the numbers, they're very equal. The numbers last time, 10 years ago, weren't quite as equal as these numbers were. That's the whole president as far as trying to get equal numbers in each ward. We did it in committee as a whole, because that's the way they did it last time. I'm not saying it was right or wrong. We did talk to Diane, so we came up with. But if you have any questions, I think the thing is about this, you can really rearrange these things any way you want. Take a sliver here, a sliver there, put it over there. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but it's just what Fred came up with. I thought he did a very nice job for us.
I can tell you, if he's available, if he can attend, I know that one of the questions that might possibly come up, and I'm assuming it has something to do with the tracks. But Ward 4 is a good example where you have a large trunk moving into it and a large trunk moving out of it, so it becomes wide. And I'm assuming, because I know the trunk moving into Ward 3 is about 200 or so people, and I'm not able to count these numbers fast enough, but it looks like there's probably a little bit more than 200 moving in. So this will kind of probably be prepared to explain why you see moving in and out of the same ward.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a reason why, or there might be a reason that's why
The other sheet I did give you shows the blocks and which numbers came out, and which numbers went in different blocks.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's what it, okay, if you look at it, it talks about the current population, and then it got like 310 and 302. Those are the different blocks and the amount of population that, for example, if you look at the first line, 84 went out of that block from Ward 3 into Ward 1. It shows you where the blocks went.
You might want to reformat this, because even if you tell me this, it doesn't make sense.
Okay, okay.
I really appreciate it, but
yeah. Okay.
Mrs. Freeman.
And this is my concern. I mean, right out of the gate, looking at it, Walnut Road. North of Walnut Road is going into Ward 3, and south of Walnut is in Ward 4. If I'm looking at this correctly. This is the southeast side. I just find it difficult splitting up north and south and, the sides of Walnut. It just doesn't make sense to me. Those people are all in one area, so why not keep them in one area?
Yeah. Joe, I went through this when I was on council, and Fred did this, I believe, back then. And I would just share with you, we didn't question it. We just voted for it because it is a complex process. And so and Fred will be happy to move things around, but if he moves them for you, then Mike might not be happy. And then if Mike gets something moved, then the next person, Jim Theriot, might not be happy. So it's really difficult. The administration had zero input in any of this. He did present it to us once it was done, but we had zero input. And our biggest concern was that we did not redistrict any council people or anybody that was running for office. That was our biggest concern because it came right before the election. So we didn't have any input. Fred did it all, and he really is not apolitical, so it's not anything political that he's done. But if you have concerns, we'll be happy to bring them in, and so take a look at it, and we can bring them in, you can share those with them.
I would say it's probably just a good idea to have at the next work session to answer everybody's questions.
We will do that.
Thank you.
But it's a tough job, just know that.